All right, a recent New York Post headline literally screamed some very alarming news. They said NYPD cops are leaving the force at an alarming rate. In fact, over 2,500 law enforcement personnel turned in their badges just so far this year in 2023 in New York City. And the truth is, New York City is not the only blue city that's facing a deficit in law enforcement personnel. There's also cities like Chicago and Portland. They're seeing the same kind of depletion of police forces. And many of the officers are leaving for departments that are in the suburbs where it's a more friendly environment and where prosecutors actually stand up for them and go after the criminals. So what all is going on this? There was another article that the headline I saw puts a stark chill on the spine of all of us. If you look at this, it basically said that good cops are fleeing because of progressive policies. And as a result, this is opening the door for unqualified candidates to enter the police force. That's quite a chilling thought. Well, joining me now to break this down further is Sergeant Clyde E. Boatwright. He's the president of the Maryland State Lodge of the Fraternal Order of Police. Sergeant Boatwright, welcome to Washington Watch. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Well, it is our privilege, and just from the very beginning, let me say thank you for all that you have done and continue to do in behalf of keeping America safe. But what are you seeing with regard to the left's attacks on officers, particularly blue cities, the policies in these cities that are leading to literally a mass exodus of officers?
Yeah, our police officers are fighting battles every day about whether or not to stay in this profession, based off of some of the legislation that's been put forward, so some of the attacks on officers' pensions, the idea that all police officers are in some ways racist, that far left-leaning rhetoric that our elected officials spew against our police officers are having people second guessing whether or not they want to continue to stay in this profession.
Yeah, it's really alarming to me. I mean, when I look at this, I see kind of two factors taking place. On the one hand, we are watching a depleted police force. On the other hand, we are seeing more and more people who are calling for help, the public calling for help because of crime and a variety of different things. And so a depletion of law enforcement and an increase of need. And in the midst of all this, how does an exodus, if you will, of qualified officers open the door for those who perhaps are not fit to wear the badge to seep into the system?
Well, there's the continuing of lowering of standards to attract police officers. Officers should have good moral character, should be ethical in their actions and things like that. But now there's a push to, like I said, lower standards to allow people that have a history of smoking marijuana and things like that to enter into our profession, where in times past that was a disqualifying factor for people that want to become law enforcement officers. This is a real danger to our communities. The fact that we have a small pool of police officers and we're all picking from the same pool of qualified candidates. There are police departments all across the country that are struggling to just attract people that want to be in this profession. And it's all simply because of the rhetoric that's being spilled by our elected officials and the need for them to continue to push these wedges between police and communities.
Boy, that's frightening. So qualify for me what you mean when you say that this is a danger to the public, to lower the standards, as you say. What kind of consequences, endangerment would you fear as the standards are lowered for law enforcement personnel?
Well, if you have, if in our profession, we know that if there's drugs, drugs go along with guns. Guns usually go along with gangs. I fear that we'll start to see members that have gang affiliation start to infiltrate our ranks. And, it's up to our local police departments to do their due diligence with the background investigations to weed out people that possibly could have gang affiliations and things like that. Because, again, if you lower the standards, there was a time that we could be able to filter out people that have ill intentions, and they will go through a background process and a screening that would allow our police departments to really pick the best and the brightest. But at this point, our police departments are grabbing who they can get.
Wow. And, I personally, I don't see any good outcome to this other than turning it around. So if you could speak to elected officials, what would you say to them that they can do to, in terms of police retention, in terms of recruitment, in terms of helping what you and your colleagues deal with every day? What can elected officials do to help?
Elected officials can stop the rhetoric that all cops are bad and that cops are in a position that they're trying to harm our communities. If we stop the rhetoric, we can stand behind our police officers, give them the support they need, pay an actual living wage, because our police officers have to work multiple jobs just to raise a family. So pay an actual living wage and stand behind your cops. We understand that, look, in policing, when you put your hands on someone, sometimes it's not pretty. And there has never been a time in our nation's history that our police officers have been under such a microscope. We have body cameras, there's surveillance cameras, there's poll cameras, and there's in-car cameras. So police officers have a number of eyes on them, and they know that. And so what you need to do, what we need our elected officials to do, is to stand behind our cops and say, you know what? Our officer did not have any malice in his heart. Again, when you put your hands on people, it sometimes looks bad, but our police officers have good intentions when they have an accountable for member of the public.
Well, they certainly do. And, there are bad actors in any profession, but the police personnel, law enforcement personnel, the vast majority of them are awesome servants of the public. We need to hear more of their stories of heroism and goodwill that they do. And again, I just want to say thank you, Sergeant Clyde Boatwright, for your incredible service, and thank you for joining me today on Washington Watch.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you to your listening audience and your viewers.
You're very welcome.